Hey guys, welcome to my first drive video on this 2024 BMW X6 M60i. This is the LTI, the Life Cycle Impulse, the facelift in normal terminology. I actually asked BMW UK if they had an X5 M60i because if you're long-term viewers of the channel, you know that I'm not the biggest fan of how an X6 or an X4 for that matter looks. They didn't have an X5 and they sent me this instead. The M60 is the flagship model in the regular X6 lineup. The only X6 that sits above that, in the UK at least, is the X6M competition. Prices start at £95,200, but this particular press car, well, yep, you guessed it, it has a lot of options on it, including this beautiful individual Amatron paintwork. And when you jump inside, it also has an individual interior. It's a black extended merino leather and it's beautiful and it smells really, really nice. But we'll talk more about the interior when we jump inside. Other options include the 20-odd thousand pound ultimate package, which basically means every individual option ticked. And that brings this specific press car's on the road retail price in at just over £121,000. On the screen, you'll see a typical finance quote for a base X6 M60i. I'm going to try and do that with videos moving forward because, let's face it, most people tend to buy these sort of cars new using finance. I've never understood or fancied the X6's styling. From the front end, it's not too bad. It actually doesn't look too dissimilar to the very good looking X5. When you get around to the side profile, slightly odd looking, but it's when you get around the back end, well, that's when it's really challenging. Through my eyes at least, that is an absolute eyesore. And the icing on the cake is that horribly tacky M60i badge. You wouldn't find one of those on eBay. Before we jump inside and out this rain, we'll just have a quick look under here because this is what is responsible for that tacky M60i badge on the back. It's an S68, so it's a full designated M engine, which means it's a 4.4 litre V8 twin turbo. It's detuned for this compared to the current X6M competition. You're looking at 530 horsepower and 750 newton meters of torque. So plenty of power, plenty of torque. That all runs through the familiar ZF 8-speed automatic gearbox and is fed to the ground via BMW's xDrive system. They say it will do the 0 to 62 sprint in just 4.3 seconds, which is really fast for something that weighs almost 2.5 tons. And we will be testing that, although it is 3 degrees today and the tarmac is now slightly damp. When you jump inside, things do start to improve, but that's only because this feels very much like the X5 until you get in the rear seat where you feel more cramped, you've got less headroom, and things like the windows are a lot smaller, so there's less light back there. The pan roof is a lot smaller compared to the X5. I just can't get my head around this car. If it looked fantastic, then I would understand compromising some of the practicalities, but we're focusing on the driver's seat and sitting here where we have a lovely, comfortable and commanding position. All the ergonomics are spot on, as you would expect in a BMW, and this car having the ultimate pack, well, there's just beautiful details everywhere. This Bowers & Wilkins sound system is to die for, and there are speakers scattered all over the cabin. We have Alcantara headlining. Although this lovely carbon trim that runs along the dash and into the doors, that's another £1,100, but it is definitely better than that piano black trim that was in the X5 I had last week, because although the piano black looks good, it has a showroom factor about it. A few months down the line or a few years down the line, they get scratches all over them and it will look terrible, I'm guessing, in not too long, whereas the carbon trim, well, it wears a lot better. Something that this particular car does lack are the fantastic sports seats, which are essentially the same seats that you get in an F90 M5. This has the comfort seats, and I think you have to have the comfort seats if you tick the individual extended merino leather options, so bear that in mind. Although these are ventilated and heated, this steering wheel has a heating element in it as well. In fact, these cup holders can either be cooled or heated. There's a wireless charging bay up front there, USB socket there, USB-C here, some USB-C in the back of the cabin, as you would expect from a premium brand like BMW in one of their flagship models. Before we roll away, I want to applaud BMW for the amount of detail they put into their imagery on their latest iDrive systems. This X6 down here isn't just any old X6, it is painted in individual Amatrin paint, the same as this car. And in fact, the image in my M3 Touring is also British racing green. I think that's really cool. See, the daytime running lights are turned on. If I flash my headlights, well, they flash on there. If I hit the hazard lights come up on this image. And in fact, if I turn this wheel, the front wheels turn, and if I go forward or reverse, you'll see the wheels rotating and turning on that image. And I think that's just a really nice little detail and touch. BMW claim this will do the 0 to 62 sprint in 4.3 seconds. It feels quicker than that to me, although that might be because of the V8 soundtrack and the fact that I am sitting so high. Let's give it a go. My Racebox Mini is ready to go. I'm in Sports Automatic, I'm in Sport Plus, and I've got the traction control and stability control in traction, because if you turn everything off for whatever reason, I can't seem to get launch control to activate. So my left foot is now hard down on the brake, right foot on the accelerator, launch control active. Here we go. Oh, that's crazy. And there's 60. 3.74 seconds. That's to 60 miles an hour. You can add maybe a tenth to that, so 3.85, 3.9, but it's a sub 4 second car to 60 miles an hour. That's ridiculous. That is so fast. The way it takes off is unreal. It's 3.5 degrees outside and the tarmac is definitely damp, but there wasn't even a hint of wheel spin. Nothing. When you knock it back into comfort, this doesn't have the full setup menu because it's not a full M car, but it does have adaptive M suspension. So when you knock it back into comfort, the suspension softens up. And although we're on massive 22-inch wheels with really low profile P0s, and I say P0s because P0s have got very stiff sidewalls, so you would think this car, scattered with M badges, massive wheels, and its capable performance, that the ride would take a bit of a hit. And I have to say, it's actually not too bad at all. That has definitely been a pleasant surprise, how well it rides when you knock everything back, or when you start up in the morning and it's in its default comfort mode. Another small surprise is this car's relative efficiency. We already know it's almost 2.5 tons, and we know it will do the 0 to 60 sprint in well under 4 seconds. Yet BMW claim on the combined cycle it will do about 25 miles to the gallon, and I've found that to be about right. And actually on longer runs, sitting at 70 miles an hour on the motorway, or you sometimes nudge 30 miles to the gallon. And I'm sure when you pick the pace up and you start using a bit more throttle, those figures are going to drop dramatically. But the fact that it's capable of that is quite impressive. And part of that is something we didn't talk about when we were looking in the engine bay and it started to rain and kind of ran out of time and wanted to get back in the car, is the fact that this, like so many other BMWs on sale today, has a mild hybrid system, a 48 volt mild hybrid system, and that does assist with a bit of low down torque and a bit of low down power and grunt, if you like. And you feel that when you pick the throttle up when you're in automatic, especially, rather than the ZF8 speed or the ECU telling the ZF8 speed to shift down a cog or two, it uses the torque that's available from this 4.4 litre lump, but it also utilizes that mild hybrid system, and you can feel that filling and helping with the combustion engine. When you combine all of that, well, it all feels very normal and natural. It just gives you a bit more magic low down power, if you like, and that's really handy when you're in a massive car like this. Something else that this X6 has is rear axle steering. Got to remember, this is 5 meters long. What does that mean? Well, when you get to a small roundabout like this, you should, in theory, be able to turn around in one go, just like that. And I know for a fact, if I didn't have rear axle steering, you wouldn't be able to do that without turning it into a 3-point turn. So it's really handy for situations like that. And it's really handy when you're parking such a long and big vehicle in tight parking spaces in towns and cities like London. It really does make the car feel shorter and more nimble than it is. When you pick the speed up above, I think it's 40 odd miles an hour, the rear axle no longer steers in the opposite direction to the front axle to help it with maneuvering at slower speeds. It now turns in the same direction as the front axle. So if I turn to the right, the rear wheels and the rear axle is also going to turn to the right. But I'm only talking about a degree or two, and once again, that just helps move this amount of mass, because remember, this has got quite a high center of gravity, and the end result is it gives you a car that feels more nimble than perhaps it should. Let's ramp things up a little bit, put it into sport individual, pull this back to give me sports automatic, pull a paddle so I've got manual, turn the traction control off, see what it's like through a twisty section of road. We know it's fast, but that is just, that's silly. That really is. So much grip. Foot on the floor out of there, absolutely no issues whatsoever. When I filmed the flybys earlier on, this road was a lot wetter, a lot slipperier, and through those S-bends with everything switched off, I mean, this was pretty leery to say the least, but in a manageable way, but leery all the same. And you can definitely feel that this is a rear bias setup. Yes, it's X-Drive, but there's a lot more power and torque going to the rear axle. You don't feel it so much in the drive because it has so much ultimate grip. I think the rear tyres are 315 section, which is Porsche 992 GT3 levels of grip. But when it's wet and slippery, you do feel the car rotating, especially under load, and it does it in such a nice and controlled manner. It really does start to defy physics. It's impressive for such a big, heavy car. And remember, this isn't claiming to be a full fat M car, but when you do knock it into the right modes and you stiffen everything up, it does have incredible capabilities. It is so fast. And it stops well as well. Oh my goodness gracious me. Looks and styling aside, what is my conclusion with this 2024 X6 M60i? Annoyingly, it's pretty damn good. It seems to do everything so well. When you knock it back into default and soften everything off, you can cruise around in this car in absolute comfort with a V8 soundtrack burbling away in the background. You even get relative efficiency, as we talked about. But when you put it into your favorite sports individual mode, everything stiffens up and it turns into a proper A or B road weapon. Although it's massive, so it needs to be a relatively wide road like this one, because on something narrower it just wouldn't work. So I have to take my hat off to BMW and BMW M engineers for building something that is just so capable, yet so big and so heavy. It's unreal, it really is. But would I have one? Absolutely not. I would have an X5 M60i over this, and although I hear the X5, when you're comparing like for like, is never quite as engaged and quite as driver focused as the equivalent X6, you're going to get 98% of this package in a slightly cheaper car, a much better looking car, and a much more practical car. So it's always going to be the X5 equivalent for me. But for those of you out there that might be looking at an X6, and this model in particular, well, it does do a very, very good job. Just make sure you remove that M60i badge on the boot. Thanks a lot for tuning in. As always, take it easy, and I'll see you at another video very, very soon. Cheers.